You know, I almost ended up in the county jail. Just kidding, mostly. But I came close. Closer than I have in 25 years. The moment I saw Eleanor splayed on those cheap concrete steps, clutching her shoulder, her face white with shock and pain, something just snapped. Something cold and heavy and absolutely precise. It was the familiar click of a safety being switched off. A sensation I hadn't felt since my last deployment out of Coronado. 25 years in naval special warfare. That teaches you to take the white-hot rage. The kind that makes your hands shake and channel it. Turn it into strategic surgical patience. The HOA enforcer, we'll call him Brock because Chad is too generic. The guy who'd shoved her, he was standing there with his two little pit bulls smirking. Like he'd just won a fight against a broken coffee machine. He had no idea who he was dealing with. No clue what kind of precision-engineered response he had just triggered. I wasn't going to put him in the hospital. That's sloppy. That's reactive. I was going to dismantle his entire operation. Methodically, legally, and from the inside out. The way I'd been trained to neutralize a threat without leaving a single piece of actionable evidence. Except a paper trail straight to a federal prison. Drop a comment below, seriously, if you've ever dealt with these power-tripping HOA tyrants. These petty dictators who desperately need to be put back in their place. Because trust me, what happened next, it's going to make your day. After 25 years of service, all I ever wanted was peace. That's what Eleanor deserved. She stood by me through the tours, the silences, the night terrors when the residual PTSD still gripped me in the early hours. She was my anchor when I was thousands of miles away in the muck. And she was my field medic when I came home with pieces of myself missing. Not physical pieces, but those fragments of the soul combat just tears away. When retirement finally came, we chose a place called Cedar Creek Preserve. Sounded rustic quiet. The listing agent promised tight-knit community. Eleanor fell in love with the backyard. Big enough for her medicinal herb garden. She's a head nurse in the city ER. She brews these teas for her patients, these gentle remedies. I appreciated the garage. Big enough for my welding gear, and the nearby lake where I could fish in true, blessed solitude. We really thought, we had found our forever haven. The first 6 months were heaven. I started teaching free self-defense classes to the neighborhood kids. Nothing serious, just discipline and awareness. Eleanor worked her shifts. We hosted small cookouts. The hypervigilance, that old military wiring that keeps you constantly scanning the perimeter, it actually started to ease. For our 25th anniversary, I built her a trellis. Not some flimsy thing. I designed it to be sturdy, elegant, handmade with care. Something to showcase the climbing roses she always wanted. The smile on her face when I unveiled it. Worth every splinter. 3 days later, the knock came. Brock Wilson, tight sweating polo shirt, clipboard held like a weapon. Mid-30s aggressive stance. He introduced himself as the compliance marshal for Cedar Creek. Mr. Ashworth, he said, his voice flat, sterile. Your garden structure violates CCR Regulation 27 Beta Section 4. All external modifications require pre-approval by the Architectural Review Committee. This is a $500 zero-tolerance violation. Remove it within 48 hours. I remember blinking slowly, processing his words with the same deliberate calm I'd use when receiving unexpected intel in a hostile village. I explained we hadn't known about the pre-approval, but we'd happily submit the paperwork retroactively. The rules are the rules, Mr. Ashworth, he sneered. No retroactive approval process. Remove it or the fine doubles. He slapped the notice into my palm, spun on his heel and strutted back to his HOA-branded SUV. That evening, as we reviewed the bylaws, the document I now realized we should have subjected to a full threat assessment before signing, Mike, our neighbor, leaned over the fence. "Ah, the compliance brigade got you," he grimaced. "Be careful with them. I'm a retired homicide detective, and even I can't stomach their operation. A woman named Vivian Thorne runs this place like a cult. They've forced at least 3 families to sell and move out in the last year alone. Why? That's what hit me. HOAs want stability. They want property values. Why would they drive residents away? Incongruity. And in my experience, incongruity always points to hidden motivations. My appeal was denied. In fact, we were cited for 5 additional violations. Wrong mailbox color, lawn half an inch too high, unauthorized garden plants, Eleanor's medicinal herbs, and creating a nuisance with my youth self-defense classes. Total fines over $2,000. This wasn't enforcement. This was targeted harassment. "This isn't right, Jack," Eleanor said quietly, looking at the notices. "We need to stand up to them. Not just for us. For everyone else they're bullying." I felt the calm settling over me. That deep, cold quiet that preceded every mission I ever led. "I just wanted a quiet retirement, Elle," I said. "But it looks like we have one more operation to plan." The HOA meeting was a farce. Vivian Thorne, mid-50s, perfectly coiffed blonde helmet hair, jewelry that screamed embezzlement. She sat in the center like a queen. To her right, Arthur Peterson, the treasurer, thin, perpetually sweating, the perfect weak link. "Mr. Ashworth," Vivian purred, dripping with false superiority. "We understand you're new to community living." I maintained perfect composure. Decades of high-stakes missions had trained my heart rate to stay flatlined under fire. I presented photos of similar unapproved structures, including a massive gazebo in Vivian's own backyard. Then, I pivoted to the financial reports, vague line items for consulting fees, landscaping contracts that seemed suspiciously inflated. Arthur's face went scarlet. Vivian's smile froze, a terrifying mask. "We are not here to discuss association finances. Mr. Ashworth, comply or face the consequences. Dismissal. Absolute." But I'd seen it. The flicker of panic in Arthur's eyes. Identifying the weak point, the harassment intensified. Brock started taking pictures through our windows. When I confronted him, he just smirked, hand resting casually on the taser clipped to his belt. "Just doing my job, Ashworth. Maybe move somewhere without rules." He was a bully, wired for authority. The type that couldn't cut it in real law enforcement, but craved the uniform. One evening, Eleanor was returning from an agonizing ER shift where they'd lost a young patient. Weary, she started dismantling part of the trellis. "It's not worth the battle, Jack," she whispered. "Some fights you just let go." I was in the garage when I heard it. Raised voices, then a sharp, gut-wrenching cry of pain. I moved without thought, covered the distance in a blur. Eleanor was on the ground, cradling her shoulder. Brock and two others stood over her, one filming. She refused a compliance inspection. Brock insisted, defensive. Eleanor looked up at me. Her professional assessment cut through the pain in her voice. "Dislocated shoulder, Jack. Maybe torn rotator cuff." My vision tunneled. Decades of training screamed, 3 targets. Unarmored. Primary aggressor front and center. In my SEAL days, Brock would have been unconscious, maybe with a crushed larynx before he even finished his sentence. But I wasn't that man anymore. Or rather, I was more than that man. I gently helped Eleanor up, supporting her weight. My voice was deadly quiet. "You've just made a serious, life-changing mistake, Brock." Mike and Rebecca arrived. Rebecca was already recording with her phone. "Call the police, Mike," Brock scoffed. "Go ahead. Officer Davies is a personal friend. Just a misunderstanding." When Davies arrived 20 minutes later, his cursory interview and dismissive attitude confirmed the connection. He refused to file a report, suggested Eleanor had tripped. As we drove Eleanor to the hospital, her shoulder immobilized, I made the decision. The HOA wasn't just corrupt, it was dangerous, and dangerous organizations needed to be dismantled systematically. Vivian, Arthur, Brock, and Davies, they had no idea what they'd just initiated. They saw a middle-aged couple they could bully. They couldn't see the methodological operator, mapping their connections, preparing the surgical strike. "In SEAL training," I told Mike the next day, "they teach you the most dangerous enemy isn't the strongest. It's the one who knows your vulnerabilities." Eleanor was home, her shoulder in a sling, forced off work for 2 weeks. Mike, the retired detective, nodded, pulling out a thick folder. "I've been collecting info for years. Never had the leverage." He revealed the depths of it. Vivian's husband died in a suspicious garage incident. Davies handled the rushed investigation. Suddenly she had money for designer cars. Arthur was fired from First National for accounting irregularities, hushed up. And Brock? Sealed record for domestic violence, which magically disappeared after he started working for Vivian. This was the Intelligence Foundation. Rebecca, the reporter, quietly dug into the financials. We brought in Sam, a young lawyer and former Army Ranger who owed Eleanor his life after she'd saved him in the ER following a motorcycle crash. Sam refused payment. "This is about balancing the scales, Jack. We found they'd violated at least 6 state statutes. They relied on residents giving up. They haven't faced someone with nothing but time, training, and a righteous cause," I told Sam. "We changed tactics. We hit them from angles they aren't defending. For a week, I systematically documented every HOA violation in the neighborhood. Selective enforcement is illegal. I photographed Vivian's unapproved gazebo, Arthur's oversized shed. I filed 12 separate requests for financial records. I attended every meeting recording procedural violations. Eleanor, despite her injury, connected me with other terrorized residents. Our dining room became an operations center. One night, Eleanor caught me staring at the whiteboard, lost in thought. "You're not going to physically confront them, are you, Jack?" she asked, a genuine fear in her eyes. I turned, gently adjusting her sling. "No, that's what they want, an excuse to escalate legally. The most effective operations aren't about brute force, Elle. They're about leverage and timing. They injured my favorite nurse. I'm not going to handle this like a blunt instrument. I'm going to dismantle their entire organization so methodically, they won't know what hit them until the federal indictment lands." The next HOA meeting was our opening salvo. I arrived early, setting up my legally permitted audio recorder. When the floor opened, I cut Vivian off politely but firmly. Actually, according to Bylaw 7.3, residents may address safety concerns as priority items. I distributed pre-prepared packets, witness statements on Eleanor's injury, photos of Vivian's illegal gazebo, and a legal analysis of the 12 unfulfilled record requests. Arthur's face was incandescent. "You're disrupting a community meeting with personal grievances." My voice was steady, the sound of steel. "I am exercising my rights as a resident under the very bylaws you are entrusted to uphold." The other residents were watching now, their heads up, hope replacing their conditioned fear. For the first time in years, the meeting continued despite Vivian's desperate motions to adjourn. The pressure mounted. Brock's harassment became frantic, a sign of enemy desperation. Then came the certified letter. A property lien threatened for $14,750 in absurd phantom fines. "They're trying to force us to pay or spend a fortune fighting," Sam confirmed. "They're betting you'll back down," I smiled. They still don't understand who they're dealing with. In the SEALs we had a saying, "The only easy day was yesterday." I've never backed down from a necessary fight. Our counterattack was multi-pronged. Rebecca published her first damning article. We received an anonymous tip about offshore accounts, and then came the ultimate pressure point. Brock, now visibly conflicted, warned us of the plot. "They're planning to set you up, Ashworth. Davies is planning something in your truck tomorrow. They'll get an anonymous tip." When I asked why he was telling me, Brock just looked at the floor. "Your wife. She treated me like a human being in the ER, even after what I did. And I've seen the financial records. They're stealing from all of us." A crack in the organizational armor. We used Mike's connections to install hidden cameras inside my truck. At 2 a.m. the camera flashed. Officer Davies planting a small package under the driver's seat. 3 hours later, he returned, uniformed. When Davies approached, I played the part. Confused, outraged. "I have nothing to hide, officer," I said, providing consent to search. Davies triumphantly retrieved the package he'd planted. "Well, well," he smirked, opening it. The smirk faltered. The package contained baking sugar. "I don't understand," he stammered. There must be some mistake. That's when I played the trump card. My voice was conversational, utterly calm. "No mistake, Officer Davies. Just a different substance than you planted at 217 this morning. I've already replaced the contents, and I have high-definition video of you approaching my vehicle and placing that package. Copies have been forwarded to my attorney, the chief, and the DA's office." The color drained from Davies' face. The other officer looked confused. Davies stood frozen, holding the evidence of his own crime. "In the teams," I said, looking right past Davies, "we learned to anticipate enemy actions and prepare countermeasures. You're currently holding evidence of attempted framing, abuse of authority, and criminal conspiracy." Davies was taken into custody. Vivian and Arthur panicked. They held an emergency closed-door meeting, their third violation of open meeting requirements. This time, Sam delivered a court order, requiring all HOA meetings be open. Neighbors gathered outside Vivian's house with signs. Rebecca's crew filmed the chaos. Arthur tried to flee out the back but found Mike Johnson calmly waiting, phone recording. "Going somewhere, Arthur? Meeting hasn't even started yet." The recording from the previous closed-door meeting proved devastating. The DA didn't see civil violations. They saw criminal conspiracy, embezzlement, and extortion. Search warrants were executed. They seized records confirming over $250,000 diverted to personal luxuries, fake companies, and offshore accounts. The arrests came on a Wednesday morning. I made sure I was positioned to watch as Vivian Thorne was escorted from her home in handcuffs, her perfect facade crumbling as neighbors witnessed her downfall. At the station, according to Mike's source, Vivian demanded to know why she was being treated like a common criminal. The booking officer replied, with a hint of satisfaction, "Do you know who you've been harassing, Mrs. Thorne? That man you were threatening is a decorated Navy SEAL with 25 years of service. You're lucky all he did was expose your crimes." Vivian's face went pale. "Ashworth is a SEAL?" The officer nodded. "Team 6, Bronze Star with Valor, and you pushed his wife down a flight of stairs. The community transformed. The trellis I built for Eleanor stands today, covered in flowering vines, a living symbol of the victory. The self-defense classes grew to include seminars on civic engagement, teaching the same principles. Identify the power structure, document the abuses, build alliances, and apply pressure at the weakest points. Brock faced lesser charges after cooperating. At his sentencing, he publicly apologized to Eleanor. "When you treated me with dignity in the hospital despite everything," he said, choked up, "it forced me to question everything. I learned that real strength isn't about controlling others. It's about holding yourself accountable." He now volunteers at the community center, using his first-hand knowledge to help residents understand their rights. 1 year later, we hosted the first community-wide celebration, not the exclusive, appearance-obsessed gatherings of the old regime, but a genuine block party. A national reporter asked me what the most important lesson was. "Freedom requires maintenance," I said, watching Eleanor laugh with neighbors.